Good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for being there. Thanks, Martin, for the introduction of my research on the mechanics of the induced earthquake. It's my honor to give a presentation in this seminar. Today, I will present my recent research work. It is about the transient fault rupture during fluid injection. But we still using the quasi-static method, and we focus on the poroelastic effect on the nucleation process of fault rupture. As we know, we are facing the important challenge of decarbonizing the economy to mitigate climate change. But
I think there is an echo. We cannot hear you very well. Let me switch off our.
Sorry, my voice is not clear.
Yeah, but let me. There's a technique. I will shut off my microphone.
Oh.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So we are facing the important challenge of decarbonizing the economy to mitigate climate change. But the preliminary energy demand will increase by 40% from 2009 to 2035, with the fossil fuel still providing most of the demand, which indicates a great number of greenhouse gas emissions. To effectively reduce this greenhouse gas emissions, subsurface carbon-free alternatives are less than, such as the geothermal energy exploitation, subsurface hydrogen storage, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Indeed, the recent special report on CCUS shows that CCUS will contribute nearly 50% of the cumulative CO2 emissions reductions from 2020 to 2030, which encourages the IEA to require that CCUS is an essential technology to limit the global temperature increase below 2 Celsius degrees above the pre-industrial level. But the proliferating geoenergy projects have led to increased number of induced earthquakes, and some of these earthquakes have led to the cancellation of projects. For instance, the induced earthquake in Kazakhstan stopped the seasonal gas storage project in Spain, and the induced earthquake in Wuhan, Korea, seized the enhanced geothermal system project. Induced seismicity have been observed in many industrial activities, such as the hydrocarbon storage and extraction, geothermal energy exploitation, and reservoir impoundment. Basically, these induced seismicity are either involved with faults or the hydraulic fracturing processes. However, we currently remain unable to forecast and manage the injection-induced seismicity. So, the main objective of this work is how can we minimize the injection or extraction-induced seismicity in geoenergy-related projects. We think the first step, the most important step, is understand the processes and the mechanism of induced seismicity. Regarding the process of inducing a seismic event, what we know is that when injected fluid into the reservoir, there will be pressure change inside the reservoir. and which in turn leads to stress and strain change inside and outside of the reservoir. All of these variations can reactive out the pre-existing fault. The current state of the art agrees that there are several potential trickling mechanisms of induced seismicity in quick static conditions. The first one is the pore pressure diffusion. The idea is that the pressure built up will decrease the effective low mass stress, which will bring the stress cycle close to the failure. And the second one is the poroelastic stress caused by the pore pressure change, as well as the cooling effect due to fluid injection. So the polar mechanical and the thermomechanical response will bring the stress data close to the failure envelope in feature. And another one is the stress weakening caused by the geochemical reactions. Assessment of this trickling mechanism usually involves fault stability analysis, which is based on the Mohr-Coulomb Failure criteria. And existing fault stability analysis have shown that the conditions of governing fault stability and the size of unstable fault patch. However, it failed to describe the correct use, that is the dynamic nucleation process of fault rupture. On the other hand, there is fair consideration focus on the dynamic process of fault rupture. In this work, they have found the conditions of nucleation and arrest of dynamic rupture. They also proposed the thermal pressurization and seismic slipping. The run-out distance could be dominant mechanisms of induced seismicity. And these dynamic studies are basically based on the interfacial slip model of characters. It involves solving a single integral equation like this one. So yeah, we have to apply the numerical method to solve this single integral equation. Which make a big challenge for company with their interfacial slip model with their reservoir simulating tools. So current studies almost neglect the poroelastic effect along the fault, and so they assume a uniform background stress. But according to the trickling mechanisms of fault reactivation, we have now the hydromechanical response is a significant trickling mechanism. So the poroelasticity is likely to play an important role on the nucleation process. So we propose to apply the analytic solution for poroelastic stress to couple with the interfacial slip model to simulate the dynamic process, dynamic rupture, instead of the numerical reservoir simulate. So the first step. We are going to develop an interfacial slip model of characters with including the poroelastic stress. The interfacial slip model is established based on the shear fractional equilibrium equation. And so in this equation, the shear stress along the fault can be described like this one. This is the combination of the background loading, the induced stress, and the shear stress drop caused by the fault slip. And on the other hand, the shear strength is the product of friction coefficient multiplied by the effective normal stress. As for our cases, to analytically evaluate the poroelastic stress, we have to use the analytic solution for this purpose. After some derivations, we got the equation 1. This is the singular integral equation. Describes the quasi-static Clark cruise. So in equation 1, all of the variables have dimensionalized. For such purpose, we define the slip weakening scale and the characteristic patch length like this one. Then we have the normalized force slip, normalized the correct length, and the normalized coordinate, normalized the time. So after establishing the equation, we have to solve it. Here we apply the Gauss-Chebyshev quadrature to solve the equation 1. Then we get the equation 2. It is a set of strong non-linear equation. Regarding the shear strength variation, we say we know there are three types contributes variations: the overpressure, the induced stress, and the slip weakening effect. So we have 4 cases like this one to compare the rule of each the content. Since for a slip independent fault, the quasi-static for the slip will never transform to the dynamic one. So in this work we focus on the cases C and D to see the rule of poroelasticity on the nucleation of dynamic rupture. So the first we wanted to make a benchmark for the solving method, the Gauss-Chebyshev quadrature, and we consider the case study of Galagash's problem for this purpose. In the Galagash's problem, they consider injection fluid into the fault. Into the fault under a constant overpressure, and then the population change around the fault can be described like this one. So to compare with the result of Galagash's paper, here we consider the case C to make the benchmark. So here in case C, we don't have the poroelastic stress. This is the result. We showed the normalized slip and normalized shear stress around the crack under a specific condition of normalized overpressure equals 0.5 and the background loading is 0.75. We showed the result for 3 different normalized time. As we can see, the simulated results by the Gauss-Chebyshev quadrature agree excellent with the result of Galagash's paper. So we think the Gauss-Chebyshev quadrature, we apply the Gauss-Chebyshev quadrature to solve the singular integral equation is available. Then we consider a case study. In this case, in our case study, we consider injection into the fault zone under a constant injection rate. Then the population change around the fault can be described by the Tyson solution. In this case, the pressure in the region around the fault can be assumed as a rectangular intrusion Then we can apply our analytic solution to evaluate the poroelastic stress inside the enclosure and outside the enclosure. So this is the form like this one. So according to this analytic solution, the shear stress along the fault is always 0. So we don't need to we don't need to consider the shear stress, and the normal stress just is the sigma 1y, and it can be expressed as a function of pore pressure change. So for this single integral equation, we have all the terms for the pore pressure change and the poroelastic stress. When we are applying our analytic solution, there is one problem is that we apply a uniform pore pressure change inside the enclosure. So it will lead to a big jump at the boundaries of the enclosure in the left and in the right, as we can see here. It's more clear. We apply to the superposition principle to smooth the poroelastic stress. That means we divided the whole enclosure into finite sub-enclosure. And we summarize the poroelastic stress of each sub-enclosure as the total one. Then we also need to low dimensionalize the pore pressure change and the poroelastic stress, because in the governing equation, all of the other variables are in the dimensionless form. So to do this, we define two variables. They are the characteristic volumetric injection rate and the aspect ratio of the fault. So after some derivation, this term, the pore pressure change, always divided by the initial normalized stress, and the poroelastic stress divided by the initial stress can be expressed like this one. Here we can see the Q divided by QW is the normalized volumetric injection rate. And let's back to the governing equation. Here, only the background loading is a given value parameter. So when given the background loading and the injection normalized volumetric injection rate, we can solve the unknowns, the normalized correct half length and the normalized fault slip. For at a arbitrary injection time. So this is the result. In this result, we showed the normalized correct half length and the normalized peak slip as a function of normalized time. For the normalized volumetric injection rate equals 0.9. We consider several background loading, and we can see in each figure the solid and dashed parts of each line correspond to the quasi-static correct glues on the physically meaningful advance and necessary rate of pore pressure diffusion. The point with the vertical slope of each carbon just means the instability of quasi-static correct glues, and that is the nucleation of dynamic rupture. So we define this point as the nucleation point. And then we have the nucleation time and the nucleation correct half length. Comparison of cases C and D shows that once including the poroelastic effect, the quasi-static correct glues change a lot. Let's look at the figure C. In case D, there are two nucleation of dynamic rupture for this relatively small value of the background loading, where there are which are the stabilization of the poroelastic effect and the sleep-waking effects. We define the first one, the low one, as the poroelasticity-induced nucleation, and the second one, the high one, as the sleep-waking induced nucleation. The episode between points A and B means the dynamic rupture propagation, and the distance between A and B is the run-out distance. So after point B, the dynamic rupture returns to the quasi-static Crack-Cruz until the sleep-waking nucleation. And we can see the Crack-Cruz and the peak sleep associated with the poroelastic nucleation are much smaller than the ones associated with the sleep-waking nucleation. And when compared with the cases C and D, we can also see that the crack half-length and the peak sleep at the case C are smaller than the one at the case C. In addition, the fall sleep starts later in case D than in case C, which means that the poroelastic effects can delay the onset of the quasi-static sleep. And we also see the ultimate nucleation instant in case D is larger than the one in case T. So it means the poroelastic effect can also delay the onset of the unabated dynamic rupture. So in this slide, we showed the normalized sleep and the normalized overpressure, poroelastic stress, and the shear stress along the fault for a specific condition. So we can see in the figure B, the normalized overpressure in case C is identical with the one in case D. The red and the blue lines is identical. So which confirms our simulations. And in the figures C and D, we can see the difference between the background loading and the shear stress. Just means the stress drop along the crack, and the difference between the shear stress and the initial strength just means the strength drop. So according to this result, we define the we define the tau p minus the tau b divided by tau p as the normalized fault under stress. It means it indicates the maximum bearing capacity of the fault. Its value ranges from 0 to 1, and the low limit means correct stress fault at the initial state, and the upper limit means the fault at the initial state is stress-free. So in this slide, we showed a map of different sleep regimes in the normalized space of fault under stress and volumetric injection light. We can see the black line divides the map into two parts. In the left part, the background loading is larger than the residual fraction. So, which means in this part, the quasi-static Crack-Cruz will eventually transform to the dynamic one, that is the seismic sleep. And in the right part, the quasi-static sleep will never transform to the dynamic one. So it is the aseismic sleep. And in the left figure, we showed the evolution of nucleation process for each of sleep rate maps. The points A, B, C, and D, E, F, G are located in the seismic sleep, and the points H, I, J, K, I, M are located in the aseismic sleep. So, and there are also there are the two green lights, which divides the map into 3 subdomains, and in the bottom and the top subdomain, the dominant mechanism of nucleation is the poroelasticity and the sleep-waking effect. So in the intermediate subdomain, it is controlled by both effects. The nucleation can be affected by the residual fraction of light, which is boundaried by the blue line. Above this line, the nucleation process are delayed or removed by the residual fraction, and below this line, the nucleation is not affected. And we also plot a similar figure, similar map for the case C. So as a comparison, we can see the map in case C. It's the same place than the one in case D. So including the poroelastic effect reveals new additional seismic and aseismic sleep regimes. So finally, it's our conclusion. We know the earthquake nucleation process, which characterizes the intermediate evolution first between the initial reactivation and the final dynamic rupture propagation. It's of fundamental significance in understanding the induced seismicity. The interfacial sleep model of clockers is developed. It's a development of Mohr-Coulomb criteria by considering the sleep-dependent shear stress and shear strength. And thus, it can be used to describe the earthquake nucleation process. So we incorporate the analytic solution for injection-induced poroelastic stress into the interfacial sleep model to understand the dynamic nucleation process, and we found, including the poroelastic effect, drastically affect the nucleation process of fault rupture. We know the nature of pore pressure induced poroelastic stress inside the sleeping fault patch is trying to resist the pore pressure change, and thus it can reduce the sleep and the shear stress along the clock. As a result, the poroelastic stress delayed the onset of both fault sleep and elevated dynamic rupture, but caused smalling kinetic clock length, peak sleep, and stress drop. With a sleep-waking effort, we are transformed to the ultimate dynamic instability or not. Only depends on the relative size between the background loading and the residual fraction of the fault. Although including the poroelastic effects doesn't alter the previous transition conditions, it reveals new additional sleep regimes. As for the limitation of this work, we'd like to say we neglected the sleep-induced pressure drop. The rule of sleep-induced pressure drop is similar with the poroelastic stress, and it can neutralize a part of the overpressure. Evaluating the stage pore pressure drop involves evaluating estimating the sleep-induced porosity and the permeability change of the fault core, so which is recommended for the future research. And finally, we want to thank the financial support from the government of Catalonia and the European Social Fund, and as well as the other project funding. Thanks for your attention. Okay. Well.
Well, thank you. Okay. Hello, any questions? Yeah.
Hi, actually, it's Sylvia. Thanks for the nice presentation. That's quite very interesting work. It wasn't completely clear, especially because the noise was very bad and it was very difficult to understand your words. But if I understand correct, this work relies on the hypothesis that the fault is embedded into an inclusion, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly. The fault is stable by the initial state.
Sorry, can you repeat?
I think you understand it right. The fault at the initial state it's stable, and after fluid injection, its stability might decrease, and then we analyze we evaluate the process for the stability decrease.
So basically, you consider that you have your poroelastic stressing due to the injection into the fault zone, and then you include this effect into the nucleation calculation, right?
Yes. In our case study, we consider the injection into the fault zone. Yes, we know a more general case should be injection at a reservoir, and the fault may be far away from the reservoir. But at this moment, it's difficult to simulate this general case, and in most of the previous studies, they also consider this case as the first step to simulate this problem.
Okay, and then you apply the sleep, so you impose the sleep, or is it correct? In the calculations, you consider that you have a certain sleep movement, or you calculate that sleep movement because of the stability conditions.
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
You could put yourself at the front.
Yeah, sorry.
You can see her as well.
Yeah, hello. So I was just wondering if the sleep that you have in that plot, so is that you impose a sleep and calculate the variation of the stress, or you will have the variation of stress and you calculate the sleep? It wasn't really clear to me.
Yes. Before for the sleep, the fault is stable and there is low stress drop. And once for the sleep starts, we can see, so let's see this one. Okay, once for the sleep starts, there will be a stress drop caused by the fault sleep, and this term is stimulated by this part in the shear stress along the crack.
So you impose this delta there, or I didn't get it. Sorry. Maybe we can discuss on the email. No worries. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And also a good idea for the last point of your conclusions. That was exactly my other questions, but you already replied. So you are thinking of adding the pressure drop or increase at the tips, right? When you have a
yes, regarding the pore pressure change, well, in our cases, we simulate the pore pressure change as a test solution. I think the test solution you are familiar with it, and this is it's a function of time and radial distance. So in the result of the result function we are plotted as a function of normalized time. This time is let's see. Here, the time is normalized. We use the normalized to generalize the problem. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Other question also from the audience. You can ask questions. I just have a small question. I have a small question. You see me? Yes. No, it's just about you only used the analytical solution, but I was wondering, have you compared to a numerical solution, or can you compare it or something? Are you planning to compare it to something more numerical?
No, at the moment, there are no numerical solution, the numerical simulator to compare to compare the interfacial model. So they are separate parts. The one uses the numerical simulation to study the trickling mechanism in the quasi-static conduct. But on the dynamic rupture, if we want to couple the interfacial model with the reservoir simulator, we can get the result, but the simulation time may be very, very long because the interfacial model, sleep model is a singular integral equation. To solve this equation, we have to use we have already used the numerical method. And in our cases, for example, to plot this figure, we applied the Gauss-Chapter conjecture to solve this equation, and it's not very fast. And we couple with the analytic solution, and the cost time for this figure is about 10 minutes. So if we use the reservoir simulator to couple with the interfacial model, I don't know how it's about the simulation time. Maybe it's very long.
It could be 2 nights. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Other questions from the audience or other? No? If not, thank you very much, Aijing, and the audience for your participation. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Martin.